So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Joe, or afternoon,
Bon,
or
bon dia, Mantas.
yeah, or afternoon or evening. Actually, when I don't know who's where and when you guys are watching this. But we with Joe joining you guys today for a chance to reflect on a session that we had, a very impressive session we had last week with a guest speaker, Chris Gargano. So some of our community was actually present in that session, this being the middle of the summer, where obviously, for obvious reasons, not there. And we want to take some time to reflect what we've heard and what sort of touched us, with the hope that it touches you guys as well. Can we start, Joe, in the following fashion? I think you know Chris way longer than I do. So can you sort of give a brief introduction as relevant to the subjects that we, the members of Ally sort of work with? Who's Chris and why is he important for us?
Yeah, it's a perfect place to start. Chris had very quick credibility with me because he was introduced to me by a wonderful friend, Julian Patty, a friend of mine from the United States who works in marketing. But she introduced me to Chris, Chris is a Emmy Award winning leader who has worked in professional baseball and professional football in the United States, having won Emmy Awards in both sides of sport, putting together teams that focus on the experience of fans and spectators and the people who support their teams. Very, very cool work. And more specifically about Chris is that when you are around Chris, is certainly in this chapter of life, which I think is important to note, um, yeah, he makes you feel like you are the most important person in the world. Like he really makes you feel good. Like the spotlight is shining brightly on you, and he is interested in you. He wants you to feel good, and he thinks a lot about how to put people in that position. Work-wise, Chris hosts a wonderful podcast where he interviews a lot of professional leaders in professional sports. He is a professor of leadership at New York University. I had the chance to speak to his leadership students earlier this year, which was a fantastic experience. And he also has his own leadership consulting practice. So I think Chris is really one of these people in the world who doesn't just talk about the fundamentals of how to bring other people up. I think he is amazingly good at the action of bringing people up. And so that's kind of my short overview for Chris. And he did exactly that in our session with him, didn't he?
I agree absolutely. He did. And I think sort of, he sort of challenged us, one of the attendants, to be present in the very, very essential and basic sense of that. Well, basically that's what's the day, what's the time, which I liked. I like this concept, that sort of reminder that it was, I think, 17th of July when we met. So there's only one 17th of July 2025. In this moment, fleeting moment is never going to come back. So sort of making the best out of it. I can tell you sort of my personal sort of what started ideas that started flowing in my head. It reminded me of a concept called YOLO. You only live once, and YOLO generally seems to be associated with justifying stupid decisions in life. At least, that's how I've seen that concept being used in the past. What I like about it, on the other hand, is that, YOLO is actually a pretty good concept to do brave stuff as well. You only have one chance to face the situation in the way that you really want to face it. And I can tell you in my different duties that I chose to perform in my life, professional, personal, whatever, there are definitely occasions when the moment is in front of you. It's there. You either choose to sort of accept the challenge or you shy away from it. And nowadays, especially for the, I guess, last few months, I actually think YOLO before I do it.
I love it. Chris is a great ambassador for that, and I think your story about the association with YOLO and Chris is really good. I think one of the things that comes up for me with Chris, I think a lot of people, so for the word kindness really comes up. And I'm talking now about leading others. Like that really came out of the conversation. He took us through an exercise where he spent about 30 seconds talking to it, like a hypothetical, talking to a team in a leadership management situation in a sort of more
Mm,
authoritarian approach. And then he reworked the entire thing just off the cuff, another 30-second speech. And then he asked us, like, who would you rather work for? And of course, it was the kinder, softer, gentler approach was nice, but really, like I was feeling that Montes, like in my bones, in my muscles, in my, inside of me, like I was feeling that. And I think that prompt for kindness. I think people like Chris, it can be very easy for uh, kind of a hardened leader to say, that sounds really nice, but the real world doesn't allow for that.
yeah.
And I think to that, all I would say is that leave space for experimentation. You may be right on that, but let's just for argument's sake, let's just leave a little bit of room to experiment with that. What if you just try Chris's approach and with a 5-minute stand-up meeting that
Mm,
you have with your team in the morning, why not just try that one time and see what happens? If you're wrong, like what did you lose? You lost one 5-minute stand-up meeting. So Chris really prompted me to take something that seems like that sounds really nice to do, but
mm,
it's not really functional. It's not really going to get us to the goal. But I think what I took away is like, you know what? There is no reason in the world why anyone couldn't experiment with that. And I'll tell you what, I think all the people that were on the call, they were obviously taking notes. I think they are going to experiment with that same exact exercise when they have the opportunity.
mm. I love it. I think the sort of there were two things that Chris mentioned, as his way of turning up. Is sort of, if we sort of try to unpack a little bit, what's his method, so to say. So he said that there are two things that are non-negotiable for him as leader, and for, I suppose, in his picture, well, for any leader actually. So the non-negotiable things are that the guy has to have energy. When he's showing up with energy, and he has to be present. He has to be fully there with his entire entity, sort of, if you say. That being said, I think it is true, absolutely true, actually, that Chris is definitely one of these people who, first and foremost, lead by example. So he actually sort of I'll show you, I won't tell you type of thing, and he showed
Yeah.
that. He definitely did. But if we think about this, I know that, and you're describing, I guess, the same situation here as well. Mm, when you're in the presence of someone like Chris, I definitely felt inspired, and I'm sure that others who were on the call felt the same way as well. Seeing from their engagement and reactions. At the same time, when you're in the midst of your own life, with your own challenges, it's easy to forget that. What do you think are I don't know if maybe, I guess, the word secret is a bit too grandiose here, but what are the
Yeah.
lessons, lessons in what Chris brought us? What are the lessons that is important for you and me to remember, for LA members to remember, as they go around their life and they face these choices, these YOLO moments, so to say?
I I think it's really easy for all of us to kind of try to adapt to the external part of the moment as it shows up. Like I think it's very easy to imagine the result we want to feel, that thing that we got to go out there and do, that jump we got to make. And I don't know, Montes, it's just kind of a phase of life, chapter of life where I am. Every time I hear that, I just sort of reverse it and I think, okay, let's go inwards. Like, what do I have to do with myself? Like, what are the things that I can do that when I have complete control, of my time, of my energy, say like the first 10, 30, 45 minutes of the day before things start getting busy, like what are the things that I can do that will actually put me in a better position to have more Chris Gargano kind of moments. Like, I don't think Chris Gargano moments or that kind of energy or that kind of kindness or that kind of serving others, I don't think we just say it and then do it. Like, I think there has to be, I don't know, there has to be, but I believe there is an element of how you prepare yourself to increase the likelihood that that version of you shows up. So when I start thinking about that, I start to think about, the basics of managing energy physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I know I don't want to get too much into the weeds of like what a morning practice looks like,
Mm.
but I think it's something. Like, I don't think that the Chris Gargano style leaders of the world just show up out of nowhere because people told themselves, "Oh, I'm going to do that tomorrow." I think that there is a bit
Yeah.
of like, okay, what kinds of things could I be doing in the first 5, 10, 30 minutes of my day for the next week, 10 days, 15 days, 20 days that I could try that might put me in a better position to sort of meet the leadership moments, to meet the tense and stress moments as they come
Yeah.
a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. I think you're hitting it. Hitting the nail on the head, so to say here, because uh, for me, this the difference of sort of the method that you're describing, the Chris's method, if you will, is is the difference. I'm trying to vocalize in my own terms, by just juxtaposing two concepts. One concept being narrow-mindedness. So that's the definition of performance, where you sort of decide that I'm going to do it, or you do it, and you might actually succeed for a little while, by sheer will.
Sure.
Yeah, but then at some point it breaks, because you're not sort of you're not doing it from a position where you took care of your own capacity to show up consistently in the same fashion as you're sort of as you're expecting from yourself. So that's the narrow mind. And sort of on the other side of this for me is the sort of single-minded focus. And single-minded still sounds like you're only focused on one thing, but for me it actually encompasses what you're describing. That, okay, so what do I need to do to be able to show up in the fashion in which I want to show up? And these are questions that seem to, on the surface of it, if you especially if you are not willing to accept some element of yourself, whether this is your bodily needs and you're sacrificing sleep, maybe it's emotional needs or you're sacrificing something else. I mean, it's definitely going to come around and bite you in the ass. But if you're not taking care of that side, it might seem that when you do actually attend to those aspects of your sort of preparation, it might seem that this is not productive work, where in fact you are actually setting yourself up to be able to be Chris when you need to be Chris.
Right. Right.
So I like it. I think it actually captures the essence of what we talk about when we talk about energy management in LA.
I think Chris the reason during my introduction of Chris, I talked about like this present Chris as we know him today. And I say that because he shared a story during our conversation with him about his time with, I believe he was with the Raiders, the football team, and he was talking about people coming into his office, and he would start talking to them while he was working on his computer, like his eyes were on the screen, and he would say, "How's and he had an idea of what he was going to ask the person, like, hey, how's your wife? Or hey, how's that project? Or hey, how's the home improvement coming along?" But he would always just sort of stop on how's and hang, because then his attention would go back to the screen.
Yeah.
And so I think Chris let us in on, and he, by the way, that person that he would do that to started to call Chris Hausa. Like, that became his name because like he got caught up in that moment. So I say that because it was so interesting. Chris talks about the focus of your attention and energy management. There's no other way to do it. No other way to manage your attention than to manage your energy. That's it. I mean, you have to, be able to do that. And one thing that actually I thought was interesting for two things I thought were very interesting related to the participants on our call and Chris's message. Chris never explicitly talked about uh, young people and attention on screens, like specifically cell phones.
Yeah.
And he shared the closest he got to that was the story we just talked about. But there was another person on our call, Don Wuegi, who is a friend of mine, who is the team leader and coach for the junior and under 23 South African canoe team. And I had just met Don a couple of weeks earlier because he brought all the athletes to the Olympic course in La Seu where I live. And I got to spend a training session with them. And then we went for coffee and did a talk together. These are all athletes, Mantas, between 15 and 23 years old. And I spent the better part of a day with them. And I follow them on social media, so I know that they have phones.
Yeah.
I never saw a phone out the entire time that we're together. Like I know that there are people out there that are paying attention to this, and I never took that was a rule. But I just sort of felt like Don being on our call, because Don told me after the call that he was like, "Oh my gosh, that was absolutely amazing." And I kind of put two and two together. I'm like, well, yeah, you just led a group of kids, these high performing athletes that would be like Chris Gargano's like ideal leadership students. Like, I mean, it was very clear that that bridge had come forward. But I just bring all of this up to say is that Chris never just goes to the enemy of energy management, which is like, our attention, the noise, and which affects our choices and affects our routines. But it's just so interesting to kind of draw those lines. And I love that was just kind of a background story within Elevating Leadership Institute this past week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the final thought that comes to my mind, listening to what you say here, is I want to come back to what you said, that that we do hear from leaders, that showing up in the way Chris, I wouldn't say prescribes, but sort of the way he believes is the right way to show up, and he practices that we can attest to for sure. So showing up in that fashion is challenging because you don't have the realities of life, and it's difficult, and you just can't do it. So I think that is actually true. It's a difference between whether you focus on what are you against. Are you against all these different things, and then it's like I don't know if you had this experience. I definitely had that experience when I was still a kid and driving a bicycle. When you're driving a bicycle and you're focusing on the object that you're bound not to hit, you inevitably hit the object.
Yeah.
Because you're focusing on the damn thing, So it's a bit of the same here. If you focus on all the reasons why you can't, you inevitably end up hitting all those reasons and probably end up not being able. So I think it's lovely that Chris was actually an embodiment of not focusing on the problems, on focusing on what's the end goal, how do you want to turn up, and I guess that would actually be my sort of final message to those who are listening and watching, that guys, I mean, you got summary now. If you want, the full recording, by the way, is actually on the platform as well. You can go and find it. And I'm happy to say that this is this variety of speakers, some of whom come and deconstruct their methods, very thoroughly, as I would say probably Matt did, for example. He actually gave a really nice sort of deconstruction of the things that he do. And then you have Chris, who actually comes and then he makes you curious and interesting. He doesn't explain it all the details to read, but he gives you actually something to orient yourself to. These are the resources that are available to you at Elevating Leadership Institute. Yeah, and what you do with those things, guys, it's up to you, really.
Yeah, so well said. Not much more to add on top of that, Mantas. I am just so blown away by the quality of people and ideas and exchange that is happening inside of our conversations. I would certainly encourage people, if they're thinking to really sharpen their leadership skills and want to be held to a higher level, our monthly ongoing program is perfect for that. And then coming up in September, we have our self-leadership sprint, which is a 5-week sprint that is all about these concepts, really, of managing our energy better. It is a phenomenal program. If anyone has interest in this, please contact us, and we would love to continue the conversation. And yeah, we're just getting started with this. We have some amazing guest leaders still coming up the rest of this year.
Oh, yes. All right. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone. And I hope to see, well, I'm pretty sure, Joe, I'll see you soon. And I hope to see everyone who's watching this in our future broadcasts. So enjoy your summer, guys, and see you soon. Bye.